Leah Harlann here. Welcome back to my Reading Corner. This rapid fire review episode will cover the rest of the books I read during 2022 and January 2023. Let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book that I read, and these are not in chronological order, so I should say the first book on this list is Into the Riverlands by Vo. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Into the Riverlands is actually a novella from a series of sorts by Vo called the Singing Hills Cycle. And all of these novellas follow the cleric Chi, who is the main character, and they are a monk of the Singing Hills Monastery. I think it was monastery. And these novellas can be read in any order. So actually, this one is the third and most recent, or not most recent, but this is the third novella in the Singing Hills cycle. The first two are The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. And after reading this one, which I gave a 4 out of 5, I do plan on going back and reading the previous two, as well as the fourth one, but either it just came out or it's going to come out, and I forgot what it was called. But let me go ahead and read you the synopsis for this one. Wandering cleric Chi of the Singing Hills travels to the Riverlands to record tales of the notorious near-immortal martial artists who haunt the region. On the road to Bethany Docks, they fall in with a pair of young women far from home and an older couple who are more than they seem. As Chi runs headlong into an ancient feud, they find themselves far more entangled in the history of the Riverlands than they ever expected to be. Accompanied by Almost Brilliant, a talking bird with an indelible memory, Chi confronts old legends and new dangers alike as they learn that every story, beautiful, ugly, kind, or cruel, bears more than one face. So I really enjoyed it. It was a very quick read, and I really liked that it was a standalone and that these novellas, can be read in any order. So I'm looking forward to picking up the two previous ones. I actually already have them from my local library. And yes, now that I check my notes, I do see that the fourth one is going to be coming out later this year in 2023. And really, I just love how self-contained they are. And it was just kind of like a really nice, I would say, I don't know if you can call it cozy, because people on Book Talk seem to have different, and Booktube have different definitions sometimes of what cozy means. There is a little bit of violence in this, but for the most part, it's really just a lovely little story about a group of people traveling together and sharing some stories in the meantime. So really, I think you should give it a try. If you don't mind a little bit of violence, I consider this a cozy read. The next book on the list is Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I read this one, I want to say in December, and I remember finishing it on a plane. It was quite timely. I remember the plane was getting ready to touch down just as I finished. I'll go ahead and read you the synopsis first and foremost. The only daughter of the kingdom of Kekaya, she is raised on tales about the might and benevolence of the gods. How they churned the vast ocean to obtain the nectar of immortality, how they vanquish evil and ensure the land of Bharat prospers, and how they offer powerful boons to the worthy. Yet she watches as her father unceremoniously banishes her mother, listens as her own worth is reduced to the marriage alliance she can secure. And when she calls upon the gods for help, they never seem to hear. Desperate for independence, she turns to the texts she once read with her mother and discovers a magic that is hers alone. With it, Kaikeyi transforms herself from an overlooked princess into a warrior, diplomat, and most favored queen. But as the evil from her childhood stories threatens the cosmic order, the path she has forged clashes with the destiny the gods have chosen for her family, and Kaikeyi must decide if resistance is worth the destruction it will wreak, and what legacy she intends to leave behind. Personally, I think fans of Circe will enjoy this book a lot. It follows a sort of a similar narrative structure where we follow this main character throughout various phases of her life, starting from a young age, And the things that make her sort of stand out from the crowd and be almost an outcast in certain ways. I mean, yes, Kaikei is a princess, but like it says in the beginning of the synopsis, she is devalued quite a lot by her father and a lot of just the norms of the societies she lives in, where as a princess, she's only as good as the marriage she can forge. And then even when she is married, she has to establish herself in the hierarchy of like the multiple wives and sort of secure a place for herself. And I think that she really does a lot of great things in this book. The story captured my attention from very early on, especially when she discovers this magic that she has. I don't want to talk too much about it, but essentially she has this ability to see threads in this in-between space, this separate plane that only she can see. And these threads are different colors and thicknesses, and they connect from her to another person. And that thread is a visual representation of her relationship to them. And if it's thicker, they have a stronger bond, and it can be different colors, and it can move. And then she learns that she can manipulate those threads. And I'll stop there, but basically that's it. It's a really fascinating concept that she uses her ability to not only see, but also mess with these threads to kind of take control of the world around her and her place in it. But it's not a perfect system. And I love that by moving through these different phases, as she grows older, more mature, more intelligent, we see, and as she uses this power of hers, we can see that, things do not always go perfect now that she has this magic. And it doesn't feel like a full fantasy, but obviously it's going to have those fantasy elements, and they do get stronger throughout the series. So I enjoyed it a lot. I think it can be hard sometimes to tell where the story is going and like what it's getting at, but the stories of the people and the women behind the protagonist, behind Kaikei, were just as incredible as her own story. I was really drawn in by most of the cast, in fact, not just Kaikei herself. And that was a strength that this book had that I didn't think Cersei always had. There were definitely times where characters stood out besides her, but on the whole, you were mostly just reading for Cersei. When I was reading Kaikei, I was very interested in a lot of the people around her, not just her. I thought the author's writing was beautiful and captivating, and the descriptions of Bharat's cultures and the people wove like a really beautiful backdrop for her life in these vivid colors. The next book on the list is Ace is Wild by Amanda DeWitt. I plucked this one off the shelf at a Barnes & Noble when I was on a shopping trip over Thanksgiving. It just, something about it called to me. The visual style, the very not subtle ace pun joke, what have you. And I decided to give it a try. It is a YA. And here is the synopsis. What happens in Vegas when an all-asexual online friend group attempts to break into a high-stakes gambling club? Shenanigans ensue. Some people join chess club, some people play football. Jack Shannon runs a secret blackjack ring in his private school's basement. What else is the son of a Las Vegas casino mogul supposed to do? Everything starts falling apart when Jack's mom is arrested for their family's ties to organized crime. His sister Beth thinks this is the Shannon family's chance to finally go straight. But Jack knows that something's not right. His mom was sold out, and he knows by who. Peter Carlavaro, rival casino owner and jilted lover. Gross. Jack hatches a plan to find out what Carlavaro's holding over his mom's head, but he can't do it alone. He recruits his closest friends, the asexual support group he met through fandom forums. Now, all he has to do is infiltrate a high-stakes gambling club and dodge dark family secrets while hopelessly navigating what it means to be in love while asexual. Easy, right? So I just kind of had a feeling, and I don't see... This could just be from my own ignorance, of course. I only came back into reading in April of 2022, but I just really don't see ace representation often in media, and I really, just seeing one on the shelf that was so blatantly ace, I had to give it a try. So I brought it home, and it was a pretty easy read about a group of ace and aromantic teenagers trying to pull off a Vegas heist. And if any of you have seen my previous videos, you know I like my heist stories. And but honestly, in this one, the heist plotline was pretty bland, pretty straightforward. However, even though the heist plotline wasn't, the star here, I did enjoy all of the lovely, gratuitous, bona fide, tactical, quintessential, illuminative, awesome, plus representation. It doesn't dwell too long on being on the ace spectrum or explaining what it means to the reader. So people who are looking for ace rep without needing to be taught about it will be pleased. I definitely liked that part. And it is also nice that the group of friends who are all like ace there is a variance not just in the type of people they are, like the various gender identities and skin colors and everything like that, but there are also, it seems like, different types of ace and aro people in the group. They're not all just one type of ace. They're not all just one like stereotype or blueprint, and I really, really liked that. We definitely saw it tackle some of the classic erasure and arguments that we see being put against asexual, what it means to be asexual, and the fact that we exist. So I think that was really nice, and being YA and an easy read, I think it's a great book for people who know like what being asexual is, like they know the definition, but they have a hard time like visualizing somebody actually living a life that way, or they don't know anyone in real life who is like that. If you don't care about that, I think it's a mildly entertaining book, but I only gave it 3.5 out of 5 because, beyond the ace representation, there really just wasn't anything particularly standout or special about the book. Like I said, the heist plotline wasn't anything new or innovative or even really all that interesting. I was much more interested in the characters and the sort of identity plot that Jack was going through, his own storyline about not just being ace and having a crush on someone, but the family dynamic as well. He has 2 sisters, and I really enjoyed his dynamic with the second oldest sister. Felt very familiar to me. So yeah, it's a perfectly fine book. You'll be a little more excited, and you'll probably get a little more out of it if you want that ace rep though. The final entry on this list is an entire trilogy, and I am going to do a little bit more of a deep dive on this one, so buckle up. I read the entire Devabad trilogy by Shannon, or S.A. Chakraborty, and sorry about that. I couldn't help but give this entire series a 5 out of 5. There just really was nothing else for it. I was rating them as I went because I thought I was going to cover the first and maybe the second one in one video and then have to put the third one in another video. But really, once I finished the trilogy, I went back and reevaluated my thoughts on the first 2, and I found that my score kind of changed. So really just I have to rate all 3 together as a set, and it gets a 5 out of 5. 5 stars. A definite recommends to all my fantasy friends, all my girlies. So I'll go ahead and give you the initial synopsis from Goodreads, and this is just for, of course, City of Brass. And it goes like this. Nari has never believed in magic. Certainly she has power. On the streets of 18th century Cairo, she's a con woman of unsurpassed talent. But she knows better than anyone that the trades she uses to get by, palm readings, czars, healings, are all tricks, sleights of hand, learned skills, a means to the delightful end of swindling Ottoman nobles. But when Nari accidentally summons an equally sly, darkly mysterious Jinn warrior to her side during one of her cons, she's forced to accept that the magical world she thought only existed in childhood stories is real. For the warrior tells her a new tale, across hot, wind-swept sands teeming with creatures of fire, and rivers where the mythical Marids sleep. Past ruins of once magnificent human metropolises, and mountains where the circling hawks are not what they seem, lies Devabad, the legendary city of brass, a city to which Nari is irrevocably bound. In that city, behind gilded brass walls laced with enchantments, behind the 6 gates of the 6 Jinn tribes, old resentments are simmering. And when Nari decides to enter this world, she learns that true power is fierce and brutal, that magic cannot shield her from the dangerous web of court politics, that even the cleverest of schemes can have deadly consequences. After all, there is a reason they say, be careful what you wish for. After spending all year submerged in fantasy settings across East and Central Asia, I was so happy to cap off 2022 with a Middle East, North African-themed fantasy. This started off as just an intriguing story featuring jinns and a fiery protagonist that prioritizes survival over everything, but it really evolved into an amazing narrative that tackled themes of identity. And I realized that I didn't finish this part of my script. Wow. Okay, that was a comma and not a period. Okay. There was supposed to be another part of that sentence. It's gone. I don't know. That was a thought I probably started writing a month ago. It's gone. It's really just a fantastic fantasy. The world building is fantastic. The characters are fantastic. It's not just Nari and Dara, the djinn that she summons. It's the people that she meets once she's in Devabad, the characters that we get a first impression of in the first book and then get developed over the course of all of these books alongside Nari, and then the other characters who come in later and also get development, and people's character arcs can go in ways that I just never expected, and that was one of my favorite parts, honestly. It's truly a wonder in fantasy nowadays to find characters who don't follow predictable character arcs like, growth and development. We see Nari's characteristics of, prioritizing survival over everything else change over time, but the person she is in the last book is still recognizable next to the person from the first book, and I really like that. Sometimes characters change so much that, you'd be hard pressed to sometimes see how they got from point A to point B from the beginning to the end, but Nari's journey is very realistic and believable. So from here on out, I'm going to give my thoughts that include spoilers for the trilogy. I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about an entire trilogy without getting into some spoilers. So, just a heads up, if you don't want any, go ahead and jump to the timestamp that I will have. I'll also have just like a visual warning that when it goes away, you can unmute the video or you can, go back to regular speed. All right, so here we go. First, I am such a sucker for characters who, single-handedly take on the burden of guilt for horrific events, like an evil, and then turn themselves into a villain that the world can unify against, so that once they are removed, everyone else can move forward. And you know what the worst part is? I don't know, did any of you have a certain character pop into your mind when I was describing that? That trope of someone turning themselves into the world's villain and then sacrificing themselves. Yeah, I can identify the exact moment I fell for this trope. Lelouch Lamperouge from Code Geass. Curse you, you beautiful son of a bitch. And now you can see the connection. I was really worried about my baby boy, Darayavahush, the whole time. The whole time. All of book 2 and book 3, he was all I could think about. And every time his agency was taken away from him or his optimism was broken by another atrocity happening, my heart just broke for him. There were so many ways Shannon could have written Dara's ending. There were plenty where he could have died, and I would have been okay with it. But I'm also glad that he's alive and atoning for his actions in this ending. It's also, kind of side note, it's also really rare that I like a love rival even after they've effectively been eliminated from the competition. But even knowing in Kingdom of Copper that Dara and Nari very likely were not going to end up together, I was like 90% sure during that book. I still loved them so much. I loved their dynamic, the way they thought of each other so much throughout the second and third book, even when they weren't together, even when they weren't in the same room. And so just reading that last scene of them together, I cried. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. It was very bittersweet. It was everything. It really was the best way to give closure, I think, to the two of them, for the reader, for the two of them. I'm not sure. Maybe some of you are unhappy. Maybe some of you wanted an ending where they were together, but I really do think that it would have been impossible to write an ending where they ended up together romantically that wouldn't have compromised Nari's values. And so yeah, to me, the more that happened, the more that Dara did, whether he, was in full control or not, the more it just kind of solidified that these two could not be together in a healthy way. But like I said earlier, I was happy with the way every major character was handled in their personal endings, because no one really gets out completely unscathed, which is very realistic considering everything they went through across 3 books. Nari and Ali have so much personal trauma and baggage that they have to process and untangle in the wake of what they had to do to save Daevabad. So I like that they don't just skip off into the sunset with a happily ever after. Like, yes, Ali is the better partner. Like, Nari and Ali make a better, romantic pair than Nari and Dara. But that's not to say that, like, they don't have their own trauma and scars to deal with. So the themes of identity that Nari struggled with across all of the books were really incredible to see reconciled, especially because that's something that can resonate with so many people on various levels. I don't have much in common with Nari from an ethnicity or experience or locale standpoint, but a lot of what she had to work through mentally and emotionally throughout the 3 books regarding her identities and sort of the communities that she stood with and defended and worked to and advocated for is something that I can relate to from my own perspectives of background and communities. So honestly, I finished the book just feeling the whole trilogy. I finished the trilogy feeling a sense of closure and completion that only comes from reading a good story that doesn't leave you wanting more, but in a good way. The only thing that I felt was sort of a hanging thread was Suleiman's ring, because someone still has to wear it and stay in the city to keep magic going for all of the Jinn. And we know Nari has that role for now, but she's going to die eventually, and nothing was ever really hinted at for how the ring would be handled afterwards. We don't really see any indication that they've considered the long-term consequences, implications, what have you. It was something that was constantly brought up throughout especially the 3rd book, that the ring cannot leave Daevabad, that whoever wears the ring has to stay in Daevabad forever. And I do feel kind of bad that Nari has that role. She clearly isn't fully comfortable with it, but I also think that the trilogy did do a good job of giving us the sense that she had put down roots in Daevabad so that she wouldn't hate staying there forever. But even so, we really don't know how the ring is going to be handled long term. It's not like I expect them to have a perfect solution for everything. The ending makes that very clear, that they still have a lot to figure out, and that they're not going to get everything right on the first try. But she and Dara kind of talk like it's a given that she'll have kids, and her descendants will collect the jewelry that he recovers to free the Jinn slaves trapped inside, but that doesn't mean she plans to pass the seal on to her children too. I think they kind of made it seem like they didn't believe in the hereditary right to Suleiman's seal, keeping it within a certain family, whether it was the Al-Qatanis, or why did I just blank on her family name? That was the Afshins were Daryavahush. Nahid. It was Nahid, because she was the Banu Nahida. Yes, the Nahids. Okay. So, again, I thought they kind of made it clear that they didn't believe in, the whole hereditary right to Suleiman's seal. So, yeah, just kind of, it just really seemed like they didn't have any idea what to do, or they didn't have any ideas for what to try. And maybe Shannon just didn't know what to do with it, which is understandable, because once Nari dies, what's to stop someone from coveting the ring and reigniting all the old problems all over again? There was nothing laid out in the ending to indicate that people were going to figure that out, and like I said before, their solution isn't perfect and neatly executed, and I like that. It just feels like something that maybe the author hoped we wouldn't remember, or just assumed would resolve itself later. If it gets touched on in any way in River of Silver, I'll probably be happy. And just as a note, I have not read River of Silver yet. I have it. I have a physical copy, but I just kind of haven't gotten to it. And I think part of it is because, like I said before, I have that sense of closure and completion from the trilogy that didn't leave me wanting more. So I didn't feel any particular urge or rush to get to River of Silver, but I do plan on reading it eventually. Well, so I really did read right up until the last day of the year, and visiting family gave me some really good time to catch up on some books, while also giving me plenty of opportunities to make impulse purchases that I don't regret. I have a book haul video in the works. I will also be making another video, like I mentioned before, in other videos where I'm going to evaluate everything I read in 2022 to see if I fulfilled my goal of reading more diverse books. So here's a little teaser. There is a points system involved. Anyway, let me know if you read any of these books, readers, and how was your 2022? Did you complete your reading goals? Tell me what you're looking forward to in 2023, how you're doing so far. Did you come right out of the gate galloping, or are you already slacking? That's all for now, patrons. I hope you read something interesting and come back soon.